There is a shirt sitting in someone's closet right now, probably folded under a stack of things they have not touched in years. And that shirt is worth between $150 and $500, maybe more. The person who owns it has walked past it 100 times without a second thought because to them, it just looks like an old polo. A little faded maybe, a logo they vaguely remember. Something from the back of a drawer that never quite made it to the donation bag. That shirt has a label on the inside, and that label is the entire story. Because what I have found after digging deep into resale markets, sold listings on eBay, Grailed, Depop, and Poshmark, and cross-checking asking prices against what things actually sold for, not what sellers hope to get, is that there are 6 specific vintage polo shirts out there that most people own without any idea what they are holding. Not obscure thrift store treasure hunting situations, not designer pieces that only fashion insiders would recognize. These are brands your parents wore, brands you grew up seeing in department stores and country clubs, and on the backs of people you actually knew. And that familiarity is exactly why people miss the value. Because when something feels ordinary, you stop looking at it closely. That changes today. Number 6. The Tommy Hilfiger 1990s flag color block rugby polo. Let me be straight with you here because most people get this wrong. The average vintage Tommy Hilfiger polo shirt, the basic short sleeve with a small chest logo, is worth maybe $25 on a good day. That is not what we are talking about. What we are talking about is the specific version Tommy was making in the early to mid 1990s, before the brand got diluted, when the design language was bold and loud and unmistakably American. These are the rugby polos with a large embroidered American flag patch on the chest or sleeve, the ones with heavy color blocking in red, white, and blue. Long sleeves, reinforced collar, substantial cotton, and a tag that says Made in USA or Made in Hong Kong, which tells you it was produced before 1998 when manufacturing moved offshore and the quality conversation changed entirely. These specific shirts are what curated vintage stores are pricing at $57 to $150 and what serious buyers are hunting for on Grailed with purpose. The reason is cultural as much as material. In 1994, Snoop Dogg appeared on Saturday Night Live wearing a bold Tommy color block rugby polo, and it meant something. It connected the brand to hip-hop in a way that neither party planned, but that permanently embedded these early pieces into cultural history. Sellers reference that moment explicitly in listings today, 30 years later. The identification rule is simple. Large flag patch, heavy color blocking, and a tag from before 1998. If you have that combination in your closet or your storage unit or your parents' house, photograph it before you do anything else with it. Number 5, the Fred Perry M12 twin-tipped polo, made in England, from the 1970s to the 1980s. Fred Perry still makes the M12 polo shirt today, and it still says, Made in England on the label, and it retails for around $110 new. So when I tell you that the vintage version of this shirt is worth money, the obvious question is, how do you tell the difference? The answer is in the construction details that changed over the decades. The 1970s and the 1980s versions were made from a noticeably heavier peak cotton, thicker, denser, with a texture that is immediately different from the lighter modern production. The laurel wreath badge on the chest is woven fabric slightly raised with a texture you can feel with your finger. Later versions moved toward flat printed or rubber logos. The size labels on the older pieces are listed in chest inches, 38, 40, 42, not S, M, L, which is the dating tell that resellers look for first. In terms of realistic sold prices, confirmed eBay sold listings show vintage, made in England, Fred Perry polos, selling for $35 to $80 in good used condition, with clean examples in unusual colorways or original condition, pushing $100 to $150. That is not life-changing money on a single shirt, But the video point here is not the ceiling, it is the floor. Most people who have one of these shirts think they have an old polo worth nothing. They do not realize that what they are looking at is a shirt that vintage resellers specifically seek, and that the label information tells the whole story. If the label says made in England, the size is listed in chest inches, and the laurel wreath badge feels woven and slightly raised rather than flat. That is the version people are paying for. Number 4. The Izod Lacoste, made in USA Polo, from the 1970s to the 1980s. From the 1960s through the early 1990s, Lacoste licensed its name to Izod for the American market. The shirts that came out of that arrangement, carrying both the Izod name and the Lacoste crocodile on a dual-branded collar tag and made in the United States, were the defining preppy polo of an entire American era. Every country club, every prep school, every suburban weekend in the 1970s and 1980s had one of these shirts somewhere in the picture. When that licensing deal ended in the early 1990s, the era closed permanently. Izod Lacoste shirts stopped being made. The supply is whatever is left in the world, and it is only decreasing. Typical sold prices for Izod Lacoste shirts in good used condition run $25 to $75 on eBay, which is already real money for something most people think is worthless. But the more interesting category is dead stock, shirts that were never worn, still in original packaging, pulled from estate sales or sealed storage. A 1970s Izod Lacoste in dead stock condition from a country club estate has legitimate collector value at $100 to $150, sometimes more for unusual colorways. The identification is easy. Look inside the collar for the dual-branded tag with both the Izod name and the Lacoste crocodile branding. Add Made in USA as confirmation. Most people over 50 who grew up in the American preppy tradition owned one of these and would recognize the label immediately, but would never in a million years guess that a reseller on Depop is specifically hunting it. Number 3. The Lacoste La Chemise Lacoste Polo, made in France, 1960s to 1980s. This is the one that gets donated constantly because it looks almost identical to a modern Lacoste polo, and nobody thinks to check the label. Here is the thing about Lacoste manufacturing history that matters enormously to value. Lacoste made its shirts in France from the brand's founding until sometime in the late 1980s or early 1990s when production moved offshore. The French made shirts, and the shirts made in Peru, Thailand, or Vietnam are materially different products, different cotton weight, different peak structure, different crocodile embroidery quality. People who owned both will tell you immediately that the comparison is not close. The French-made versions say La Chemise Lacoste on the interior label and Made in France on the country of origin tag. The modern shirts say simply Lacoste. That difference in the label is the difference between a shirt worth $20 at Goodwill and a shirt worth $75 to $150 on the secondary market, more for rare colorways or pristine condition. Honest price range based on actual sold listings, $30 to $75 for typical used examples in good condition, $100 to $150 for clean examples in unusual colors or near dead stock condition. The value story here is not about dramatic numbers. It is about the fact that people are donating these shirts every single day without knowing the label is significant, and resellers who know to look for La Chemise Lacoste and Made in France together are the ones picking them up. Number 2. The Ralph Lauren Polo Bear shirt, original 1990s pre-2001. Pay close attention here because this is where the numbers get real and where the difference between knowing and not knowing matters most. Ralph Lauren introduced the polo bear motif in the early 1990s, a little embroidered or printed bear wearing various outfits in various scenes, skiing, holding an American flag in a tuxedo, or on a skateboard. The line was discontinued in 2001. In 2015, Ralph Lauren brought it back. This means there are original versions and modern versions, and the market treats them completely differently. A confirmed eBay sold listing showed a dead stock original Bear shirt with an American flag motif selling for $149.99. Grailed listings for original 1990s Bear shirts start around $75 and climb significantly based on the specific bear scene. The skiing bear, the skateboarding bear, the tuxedo bear. These specific motifs command premiums well above the standard seated bear. Ralph Lauren itself launched an in-house vintage resale program in late 2024, authenticating and selling original vintage polo pieces, which is perhaps the most definitive signal available that the collector demand for these shirts is real, institutional, and not going away. The label tells you everything. Original 1990s pieces have a sewn fabric tag inside the neck, a physical piece of fabric stitched in with Polo by Ralph Lauren in the older logo font. Post-2015 relaunched pieces use a modern printed neck label without the sewn tag. Flip the collar, look at the label, and you will know immediately which version you have. If it is sewn fabric with the older font and the bear is doing something specific rather than just sitting, you are holding something the collector market actively wants. Number 1. The Ralph Lauren 1992 Stadium Collection P-Wing Polo shirt. There are people right now who have this shirt in a drawer and genuinely believe it is just an old polo with a funny logo on the front. They are wrong in a way that could cost them real money if they donate it or throw it out without looking it up first. The 1992 Stadium Collection was a limited sportswear line Ralph Lauren released as part of the brand's polo sport push in the early 1990s. The P-Wing Polo, named for the distinctive winged polo player patch sewn onto the center chest, which looks nothing like the standard embroidered pony logo, became one of the most collected pieces in vintage American sportswear history. The Low Lifes, a Brooklyn-based collective that formed in the late 1980s around a shared obsession with Ralph Lauren sportswear, helped cement these pieces as cultural artifacts before the internet even existed to document it. Confirmed sold prices for original P-Wing polo shirts. eBay sold listings show $175 for a dead stock tagged example, and grailed listings for the authentic 1992 Stadium versions in good condition start at $360 to $500. The asking price on a pristine Stadium shirt can reach several $100s, and that is specifically for the shirt, not jackets, not hoodies, just the polo. Ralph Lauren reissued the Stadium collection in 2017 precisely because the original pieces were trading at prices the brand could no longer ignore. The reissues are worth significantly less. The way to tell them apart is simple. Original 1992 pieces have the older polo by Ralph Lauren sewn fabric tag, often say made in USA or made in Hong Kong, and the P-Wing patch itself has a specific texture and stitching quality that differs from the reissue version. The graphic on the original is denser. The patch sits differently on the chest. If you find a polo shirt with a winged logo patch on the chest, not the standard running polo player but wings, look up the 1992 Stadium collection before you do a single other thing with it. The difference between knowing and not knowing could be $400 on a shirt you have been using as a sleep shirt. Every shirt on this list shares one characteristic. Their value was created at a specific moment in manufacturing history, cultural history, or brand history, and that moment cannot be recreated. The French manufacturing ended. The Izod licensing deal ended. The original Stadium collection sold out in 1992 and has not been authentically reproduced. What exists is what exists, and supply only goes down as pieces get lost, damaged, or donated without anyone realizing what they were.